Hey guys, today we're going to be testing the image stabilization systems of 3 different cameras. We've got the Fuji X-T4, which I've been using since it came out to shoot videos with. We've got the Sony FX3, which I just got a couple of months ago and I've really been loving and using that for video. And then we've got my friend's Canon R5, which I've also thrown into the test. This test is strictly comparing image stabilization. So we didn't bother matching white balance perfectly. We didn't try and match exposures, and we accidentally left the 5D in 1080p for a lot of these tests. So I wouldn't use this as an image quality or color science comparison. We're just comparing stabilization. I am interested in comparing color science, so we'll make a separate video for that in future, but this is definitely not that video. Now, somebody might have thought they were turning off image stabilization on the R5 when they're actually just turning off digital image stabilization. So we don't actually have any unstabilized footage from the R5. I don't think it matters for comparing between camera systems for IBIS on, but I just thought I'd mention that in case you notice that there's no unstabilized R5 footage in these first tests. We often shoot around 35mm, so we thought our first test, which is the most important test to me, would be a talking head at 35mm. This is the FX3 at 35mm with IBIS turned off. This is the FX3 with image stabilization turned on. This is the FX3 with a 35mm with enhanced IS turned on. This is the Canon R5 at 35mm with standard IBIS turned on. This is the Canon R5 at 35mm with enhanced IBIS. This is the Fuji X-T4 with a 23mm lens, 35 equivalent with IBIS turned off. This is the Fuji X-T4 with standard image stabilization turned on. This is the X-T4 with a 23mm lens with enhanced image stabilization turned on. Our second test is at 85mm. So we're using the Sony 85mm f1.8. We're using the Fuji 56mm f1.2. And for the Canon, we're cheating a bit and just using the 24-70 at 70mm. Now this is a bit wider, which means it's sort of got an unfair advantage. As it's wider, you're not going to notice the shake as much. But we didn't have an 85mm lens for Canon, so that's the best we could do. This is the FX3 at 85mm with IBIS turned off. This is the FX3 at 85mm with standard IBIS turned on. This is the FX3 at 85mm with active image stabilization turned on. This is the Canon R5 at 70mm with standard IBIS turned on. This is the Canon R5 at 70mm with enhanced IS. This is the Fuji X-T4 with the 56mm lens with image stabilization turned off. This is the Fujifilm X-T4 with the 56mm lens with standard image stabilization. This is the Fujifilm X-T4 with enhanced image stabilization. Our next test was the walking test. So this is where the camera person was behind me, maintaining a steady distance and following me. The problem with this is the harsh footsteps translate to jerky camera movement. We weren't expecting the image stabilization systems of any of these cameras to be able to compensate perfectly for that, but we were curious to see if it would result in usable footage or not. After that, we then went with the pan test. So this is just where I walked from right to left and we just had the camera smoothly pan. We're expecting pretty bad results with footsteps and pretty good results with the panning, but we just wanted to make sure that the panning test on all camera systems gave you a smooth movement and didn't sort of jerkily catch up to the camera movement and then fall behind again. Our final test was a B-roll test. So in this we were using a camera as the subject and just wanted to see if we could get some handhold B-roll shots and how smooth those would be. This is subtly different to the last test because instead of a subject that's a couple of meters away, it's something much closer, so some movements can really be exaggerated. We were shooting on the 85mm for the Sony, we shot at 55mm on the Fuji and 70mm on the Canon. So it's not perfectly fair. I also noticed when reviewing the footage that I was moving at different speeds between the different cameras. So it's not perfect, but it's really good to give you an idea of what to expect if you're doing handheld B-roll and relying only on the IBIS systems of these cameras. After reviewing the footage, I'm amazed how good all of these systems are. So in my opinion, the Canon and the Sony are a little bit ahead of the Fuji, but they're all doing amazing jobs. Back in the day, I used to use the X-T4, and when I was shooting a talking head on location a lot, I'd use a monopod. That way I could still move quickly and get a bit of handheld movement. You definitely don't need to do that at all anymore. All these IBIS systems are so good. There's no weird jerkiness when shooting talking heads. They're just amazing. It's not a replacement for a gimbal, obviously, as we already knew. If you're trying to follow somebody, you definitely still need a gimbal, so the IBIS systems are no good for that. But for any sort of other handheld movements where you're not actually stepping, if you're just moving side to side or staying on the spot, all these systems are amazing. I think Fuji's slightly behind, but they're all so good, and the Sony and the Canon didn't allow me to get any shots the Fuji couldn't get. It was just they were slightly more stabilized in my opinion. I'd love to hear what you guys think, so definitely leave a comment below, and I'd love any suggestions on future videos. I'm really wanting to make some more Fuji content and some more Sony content, so let me know what you'd love to see below.
Good boy, Max. You're a good baba. You're a good boy.